internet has been a key proponent of the increase in sales. So we've seen about a 30% year-over-year growth for the last 4 or 5 years in the consumer and microbusiness space. What we're looking at now is that the market has proven itself when it comes to security of the data being off-site in the cloud, of different services offering secure services and which ones have come out on top, which ones hadn't. Over the years, we've been compared against a number of services that are no longer around. HP Upline is one of the bigger ones that went under. Iron Mountain has recently discontinued their online backup service. So it's, so many different services have come through and gone in and out, and you have really the batch of storage services that let you put data up in the cloud, and then you have the true backup service like SOS that does it very securely, and it's truly a viable option for the SMB. So the IDC, there's a study, or some figures down here at the bottom right, and I'll read them out here for everyone who's listening in. IDC confirms that massive adoption by business communities near term. So 16% of the companies surveyed by the IDC are currently using some sort of online backup today. The remainder are evaluating and are planning to use an online backup today. And of the 16% that they surveyed, 3/4 of those were simply evaluating or had some type of limited implementation, meaning maybe it was just an online backup for a couple of their users or for one of their machines. So what we're really looking at is this huge increase in the opportunity for adoption, not just in the number of adopters, but the scope of adoption per business. So rather than having a cloud-based backup solution being something that is complementary to other services in play, now we're looking at cloud-based backup solutions as the primary means of backup for these businesses. And that's where SOS Server comes in. We're adding not only a file and folder system that's really nice, but we're adding in a server-based image backup system that can be off-site that truly gives you an end-to-end solution. Excuse me. So when we get to where the market has grown and what kind of addressable market we have currently. So the SOS service really was, again, quite limited to file and folder backups. That's great for file servers and for end users. Now with the addition of the ServerSafe product, we've now increased the functionality at the same time that the price is really coming down, and we're reaching this price functionality inflection point where it just makes too much sense not to move into this type of a service. So the functionality being both security and an actual functionality, security being a big part of a feature set, this is now a viable option for a lot of these partners who didn't typically see it as a viable option. A lot of them are waiting on older, more expensive services to come to an expiration point before moving into a new service, and that point is here, and this is what we're really looking at. So with the addition of SOS ServerSafe, we really doubled our addressable market. And in this data, what we're looking at right now for 2012 is a jump from a $1.7 billion per year industry for the consumers and the small office, home office, combined with business, to now a $2.2 billion industry, including the business expenditure. But then this speaks to really a bigger market that we can't really put big numbers into it. John has a good question. Did I hear him say Iron Mountain has discontinued this service? Iron Mountain has a number of cloud services, and they discontinued their standalone file and folder system. So you can check that out. But if you look at what the $2.2 billion industry increase really reaches, is it doesn't speak to the managed services that go behind this. And the quote at the bottom, I'll read this out for everyone who can't read it. The data speaks to an untapped opportunity for offerings beyond data backup and recovery, such as continuity services. So these continuity services, and I'm not going to read the rest of it, these include, who's actually managing these things. As a lot of people know, that the reason the managed service market has come to bear recently is because the affordability and the increase in access to machines remotely. So what we can do remotely now wasn't always possible, even 5 years ago or even a couple years ago. So the managed service market, combined with the increased functionality that we're releasing out here, is really putting a severely vital service right in the crosshairs of what businesses can afford, and at a time when a lot of their services are turning up to expire. So all hardware-based systems, you look at hardware refresh every 3 to 5 years, and generally we're right about that time. A lot of spending is also done around the new year because a lot of budget, excess budget needs to not be excess in a lot of departments, so they'll spend what they need to, or this is just the time at which they negotiate most of their bigger contracts. So this is really a good time to get into it. So what we're looking at again is to speak to the increase in adoption from the SMB market. So the SMB market has been relatively safe when it comes to implementing these new services, and that's because SMBs are a little more conservative in their take on new technology. That's because they need to have proven security depending on what type of vertical they're in. They need to have better availability and a better price point. It needs to be cost effective. So SMBs are typically not going to be your early adopters. You look at individuals and so on who are really going to be the first into that. So kind of like if those of you familiar with going from film to digital photography, it's been a slow adoption curve because the technology has gotten to a point where you have your film critics who no longer snuff their nose at digital film, and then it takes a few of the bigger guys to actually move into it before everyone is. Now you can't go anywhere with just normal film. It doesn't make any sense. The big part is what you paid for those film systems. But anyway, so what we're looking at with SMB is really this year, the evaluation started. So they started off on maybe one branch, one satellite office, a couple of users, because generally there's a big expendable relationship with user data that's on user machines. But TechCrunch just reviewed a study that came out, and I forget who ran the study, but you can look up on TechCrunch, I'm sure, that showed that nearly 60% of all of businesses' data still resided on individual workstations and laptops. So despite our efforts as IT professionals and the CIOs to get information centralized, you're always going to find that the biggest point of exposure in any system is at the user level. And users, that's the reliability we have, is that if they're going to be unreliable. So a user-based backup solution was a newly viable option just a few years ago and has been adopted relative to the rest of the market. So individual users, some of the more important users in a business have online backup in their system. But now we're looking at server application and recovery. So now it's not just individual users or workstations. This is an entire server. It's not just getting these things in place. It's having a way to centralize or to centrally manage the backups that are running on all these things. So we've included all of this in one single package. So we get into the product. What does the product include, and how are we really changing up the offering? So before, we were really specializing at the 5 o'clock file data backup of your file servers, and then we had backup your desk life up at 9, 10 o'clock. So your workstations and your file servers are pretty much where SOS lived. What we're doing now is we're adding mobile life. So we have mobile applications that will be made available for the iPhone and the Droid that can back up information from those devices and also can be used to recover or share information from the rest of your backup set. So now you have a really nice mobile to workstation to even cloud backup solution for your individual users. That's terrific. How many businesses are using different social mediums for marketing purposes now? Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Having those friend lists and those followers is really a vital part of the usefulness of those mediums. Being able to back up your follower list if your information is lost, say when the World Cup went on and Twitter almost shut down the link between the Atlantic and the U.S. and the rest of the world. Looking at the link between any type of major event that overloads these social mediums, it's important to be able to back these up, and these become increasingly less based on individual needs, but more related to your business. Then we get to mobile life. You have contacts that you need to be able to get a hold of at any given time. If you're off-site, you need to be able to recover something. It's nice to have an application that you can simply log into and reference a file, or to share that file to somebody who needs to look at it. A lot of services out there, like a lot of storage services, are dangerous for CIOs because you don't have any control over what users are making available to the public. So you have all these services like Box.net and Dropbox, which are putting businesses' information out in this cloud that the CIO doesn't really have any transparency or visibility into. But now with our Pulse management system and with the availability to manage backup sets and get all this from a mobile device to a workstation, you have that functionality and you have that control. Then you move into what we're doing from a more of a business perspective, being able to back up your system data. And this is the SOS Server Safe product that we're introducing this month. So system state, applications, so your SQL servers, Exchange, SharePoint, Active Directory, all these things are now covered by our system. Some of our existing partners on the line today will remember what we did before, which was using a third party to create an image of a system or a volume, and then split that image up into smaller bits, then using SOS to go off-site. Now that was done because SOS has the most secure cloud in the industry today, and so they wanted to take advantage of that. Well, now we've built it all into one application, and there's no one else in the market today who's currently offering